A fleet that once erased civilizations now hovers above a dying beach, demanding answers from one single human. Because the impossible happened. An empire stopped its weapons after watching him share his last meal with a starving alien. So tell me, what kind of man breaks a galactic doctrine with a bowl of expired soup? Where are you watching from? And subscribe to help this universe grow. The story begins now. The wind off the Atlantic carried salt and regret in equal measure. Sam Holt sat beside his makeshift fire pit, watching the rusted kettle bubble over flames fed by driftwood and broken furniture. 46 years on this planet, and he had finally learned the exact temperature at which hope begins to evaporate. The can in his hands bore a faded label, Darrow Foods. Beef soup. Expiration date long past caring. It was the last one. Sam had checked 3 times that morning, moving through the empty shelves of his reinforced tent like a man counting the beats of a dying heart. After this, there would be fishing, there would be the tide pools, there would be whatever came next. He had survived the colony collapse on Kepler 442b, watched 300 souls burn when the atmospheric processors failed, came home to find Earth abandoned by the Galactic Confederation, left to rot like forgotten fruit. But Sam Holt still knew how to boil water, still knew the difference between existing and being alive. The stars were different now, colder. Ships passed overhead sometimes, their contrails writing promises in languages humanity no longer spoke. The village of New Plymouth, population 47, had learned not to wave. Sam pulled the tab on the can. The sound echoed across the empty beach like a declaration of war against the universe. He was pouring the contents into his battered kettle when the sky cracked open. Not a ship, a person, falling. The impact threw sand 20 feet in every direction. Sam dropped the can, soup hissing as it hit the fire. His mechanic's instincts kicked in before his survival ones. Crash trajectory, velocity, entry burn. Someone had come in hard and desperate. The figure in the crater was tall, impossibly tall, with skin that caught moonlight like oil on water. Opalescent. That was the word. Her armor was shattered, exposing wounds that leaked something too silver to be blood. Golden eyes fixed on Sam with the desperate clarity of the dying. She spoke. The translator in Sam's old colony jacket coughed to life, spitting fragments. Hunger. Cold. Please. Sam looked at her, looked at the kettle, looked at the last can, now half empty. Contents seeping into sand that would never grow anything again. In 72 hours, fleet commanders would kneel before this moment, but Sam Holt did not know that yet. He only knew that the soup was hot, and she was not. Sam picked up the kettle, wrapped his sleeve around the handle, and walked to the crater's edge. The alien woman tried to rise, failed, collapsed back. Her breathing was wrong, syncopated, like an engine missing cylinders. He sat down beside her, held out the kettle. Here. It is awful, but it is warm. She stared at him. 3 seconds. 5. Her hand, 3-fingered and trembling, reached for the offering, then stopped. Why? Why human? Sam thought about his colony, about the 300 souls who burned because no one came, about Earth, spinning forgotten in the dark, about the fact that kindness was the last thing that still cost nothing and meant everything. Because I can still choose to be human. He placed the kettle in her hands, watched her bring it to her lips, watched her eyes widen as warmth hit her system for what might have been the first time in days, weeks, however long she had been running. They shared the silence, shared the wind, shared the last meal of a man who did not yet know he had just bought a planet. The alien woman's name, she said eventually, was Arena. The translator made it sound like a prayer. She was Talari. The word hit Sam like a fist. He had heard it before, in the colony. Talari were the Confederation's enforcers. The Iron Hand, the ones who made examples. You're one of them. Was. Her voice was steady despite the shaking. Was one of them. Sam looked at the stars again, looked at the empty beach, looked at the woman who had fallen from the sky into his last meal. What happens now? Arina's golden eyes reflected firelight. Now we wait. They heard me fall. They always do. Sam nodded, picked up a piece of driftwood and fed it to the flames. The fire grew brighter. Above them, the stars watched, and in the darkness between worlds, something began moving toward Earth that had not moved in 300 years. A fleet, coming for a refugee, coming for a man who shared his soup. But that night, on a beach at the end of everything, Sam Holt and Arina simply sat in the warmth of a fire built from ruins and remembered what it felt like to not be alone. He did not know that by morning, the old radio in the village would crackle to life. Did not know that the ancient Talari protocols, dormant for centuries, had already begun counting his heartbeats. Did not know that the pendant around Arina's neck, hidden beneath shattered armor, was recording everything. All he knew was that the soup was gone, but the warmth remained, and sometimes that was enough to survive one more night. Morning came with the smell of seaweed and something that might have been coffee if Sam squinted hard enough at reality. Arina was still alive, which surprised them both. She sat outside his tent, running 3 fingers across the makeshift bandages he had fashioned from kelp and duct tape during the night. Kelp. You used ocean plants. Sam handed her a cup of the almost coffee. It's got iodine. Antiseptic properties. Learned it from a medic on Kepler before everything went to hell. She took the cup, stared at it, then took a careful sip. Her face did something complicated. This is terrible. I know, but it's hot. For the first time since falling from the sky, Arina made a sound that might have been a laugh. It came out broken, like she had forgotten how. On my world we have a word for this. Karesh. It means a gift that insults and honors simultaneously. Sam grinned despite himself. We call it bad coffee. Over the next 3 days, Sam learned that Arina could repair a wind turbine with nothing but scrap metal and stubbornness. She moved through the village like a ghost, fixing generators, patching solar panels, her 3-fingered hands moving with the precision of someone who had built and destroyed entire systems. The villagers watched from windows, afraid to speak, afraid to hope. Old Martha was the first to approach. She brought a jar of pickled fish and left it outside Sam's tent without a word. By evening there were 6 more jars. By the second day, someone had left a blanket. The Talari killed humans. Everyone knew that. But this one fixed Marcus's water purifier. This one showed young Emma how to redirect power from the dead grid. This one sat by the fire with Sam Holt and did not take more than her share. "Why are you helping us, Sam?" Marcus asked one afternoon, watching Arina work. "She's one of them, the butchers." Sam thought about the soup, about the choice he made without thinking. Because nobody helped us when we needed it. Maybe that can change. On the 4th night, Sam found the wreckage of her ship. It was half buried in the dunes, a twisted sculpture of metal that still hummed with dying energy. Arina appeared beside him like a shadow. I should have destroyed it. She sounded tired, so tired, but I could not. It was my last piece of home. Sam understood that better than he wanted to. They worked together in silence, salvaging components. That was when he found it. A pendant, crystalline and strange, nestled in what must have been a storage compartment. It pulsed with soft light. What is this? Arina's reaction was immediate. She snatched it from his hands, then seemed to catch herself. Her golden eyes met his. It is complicated. Sam waited. He had learned that Arina needed space to find her words, like someone translating between not just languages, but entire philosophies. It is a memory keeper. She held it up, and it cast prisms across the sand. We use them to record star charts, fleet movements. It should be dormant. She touched it, and suddenly the air filled with holograms, maps, coordinates, things Sam recognized from his navigation days. This is Talari fleet positioning. Sam felt cold despite the fire. If this is active, they will find it. Irina's voice was hollow. They will come. How long? Days, perhaps hours. The pendant? It. She looked at him, and something in her expression broke. I am sorry, Sam Holt. I brought death to your village. Sam surprised himself by laughing. It was not a kind sound. Death was already here. You just brought company. That night they sat by the fire again. The pendant lay between them, still pulsing. Irina tried to explain why she had deserted. The colony on Theta Rim, the order to eradicate. The moment she saw a human child holding something that might have been a flower, offering it to soldiers who had come to kill. I understood then that we had become the monsters we claimed to hunt. Sam fed the fire. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. Somewhere out there, sensors were triangulating. Engines were burning hard for Earth. A reckoning was coming. You could run. Sam said it quietly. Leave the pendant. Draw them away from here. I could. Irina stared into the flames. But I'm tired of running, Sam Holt. And you shared your last meal with a monster. Perhaps it is time for monsters to learn from mechanics. What was that supposed to mean, Sam wanted to ask. But then he heard it. The sound every human who survived the Exodus knew in their bones. The sound of ships breaking atmosphere. Many ships. Irina stood, her body going rigid. They are here! Faster than I calculated, the old radio in Marcus's workshop crackled to life. A voice, cold and efficient, speaking Talari. The translator spat out fragments. Return the deserter. You have 4 hours. Compliance is not optional. Sam looked at the pendant, looked at Irina, looked at the village that had finally started to feel like something worth saving. Then, I guess we have 4 hours to figure out if kindness is really as stupid as everyone says. Irina's laugh was bitter. In my experience, kindness is the most dangerous weapon humanity possesses. You never know when to stop deploying it. High above, the Talari fleet took position. Weapons charged, patience measured in minutes. And on a beach at the edge of a forgotten world, a mechanic and a deserter stood together, holding nothing but a pendant that recorded everything and a choice that had already been made. The universe was about to learn something it had forgotten. That sometimes the most powerful force in existence is a person who shares their last meal and refuses to regret it. The Talari fleet hung in orbit like a crown of thorns. 12 warships, each capable of reducing continents to glass. Sam counted them through the old telescope Marcus had salvaged from the community college before it burned. 12 chances for everything to go wrong. 3 hours left. Irina spent the first hour teaching Emma how to maintain the generators, showed Marcus the proper way to purge air from the water lines, gave old Martha a small device that would keep her heart medication cold for the next decade. Every gesture was a goodbye. Sam watched from the beach, pretending not to notice. The second hour, Irina came to him. There is a cave system, north of here. Old smuggler routes from before the collapse. She would not meet his eyes. I can hide there, draw their search patterns away, give you time to... To what? Sam kept his voice level. To wait for them to burn the village anyway when they do not find you. To live knowing I hid while you faced them alone. You do not understand Talari justice. Her voice cracked. They will make an example of me. Of anyone who helped me. She finally looked at him, and her golden eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. You gave me soup, Sam Holt, not a death sentence. Sam thought about the colony, about the 300 people he could not save, about the soup can with Darrow Foods printed on the side, and the number 11 he had noticed but not questioned. About the choice between survival and living. I am going with you. What? You heard me. Sam stood, brushed sand from his pants. You turn yourself in, I am walking up that ramp right beside you. They want to make an example. They can make it of both of us. Irina stared at him like he had started speaking in physics equations. That is the most illogical. You will die, Sam Holt. Probably. He picked up his jacket, the one with the colony patch still sewn on the shoulder. "But I will die human. And maybe that matters." "You are insane." Sam grinned without humor. "You're the third person to tell me that this week. Come on, we have an hour left and I want real coffee first." They did not get real coffee. What they got was the village gathering on the beach, all 47 souls, standing together as the Talari dropship descended. No one spoke. No one needed to. Marcus handed Sam a thermos. "It is the good stuff, from the emergency stash." Old Martha pressed something into Arina's hand, a stone, worn smooth by the ocean. "For luck. Though I suspect you will need more than that." Emma, barely 16, looked up at Arina with the kind of certainty that only the young possess. "Thank you for fixing my grandfather's oxygen system. He died anyway, but he died breathing easy. That matters." The dropship landed. The ramp descended. 6 Talari soldiers, armor pristine, weapons ready. They moved with the efficiency of a species that had forgotten what doubt felt like. "The deserter will come forward. Now." Arina stepped forward. Sam stepped with her. The lead soldier's helmet tilted. "You are human. You are irrelevant to this matter." Sam felt the weight of every choice that had led him to this moment. The colony that burned. The earth that was abandoned. The soup he shared because the alternative was becoming something he could not live with. "I am Sam Holt. I gave aid to your deserter, fed her, sheltered her, helped her repair equipment. By your laws, that makes me complicit. So if you are taking her, you are taking me too." The soldier seemed to process this. Then, almost curious, "Why would you confess to capital offenses?" "Because someone needs to witness what happens next. And I want to see what a bowl of bad soup started." The soldier's weapon stayed level, but something in their posture changed. Confusion, maybe, or the beginning of doubt. "You will be executed alongside the deserter." Sam looked at Arina. She looked back. In her eyes, he saw something he had not seen since the colony burned. Recognition. Of being seen. Of mattering. "Then I die in good company." The villagers said nothing as Sam and Arina walked up the ramp, said nothing as the dropship lifted, carrying them into the dark. But old Martha held up the thermos in salute, and Marcus whispered something that sounded like a prayer. And Emma recorded the moment on her battered camera because someone needed to remember. The interior of the Talari warship was everything Earth was not. Clean, efficient, cold. They were taken to a holding cell that was probably meant to be intimidating, but mostly made Sam think of the storage lockers back on Kepler before everything went wrong. Arina sat on the metal bench, her shoulders tight. "You did not have to do this." Sam sat beside her. "Yeah, I did. They will kill you to make a point. Probably." He pulled out the thermos Marcus had given him, opened it. The smell of actual coffee filled the cell, rich and impossible. "But until they do, I am going to drink this coffee and pretend the universe makes sense." Arina stared at the thermos. Then slowly, she started to laugh. Really laugh. The kind that comes from the belly and sounds like breaking. "What? You are about to die and you are drinking coffee." She shook her head, and the pendant around her neck caught the sterile light. "Humans, you are all absolutely mad." Sam poured coffee into the thermos cap, offered it to her. "First time someone's called me mad for drinking good coffee." She took it, sipped, made a face. "This is still terrible, but it is warm." They sat in silence, passing the thermos between them. Above them, the ship adjusted its orbit. Around them, 3,000 Talari crew went about their efficient, emotionless duties. And somewhere in the command center, a commander named Vraxian looked at the holding cell feeds and felt something that might have been confusion. A human had confessed to capital crimes, volunteered for execution, for a deserter, for someone who had, by all logical accounting, done nothing to earn such loyalty. It was illogical, wasteful, stupid. And Commander Vraxian, who had commanded fleets for 2 centuries and never questioned an order, found himself wondering what kind of soup could possibly be worth dying for. The pendant around Arina's neck continued recording. Every word, every silence, every sip of terrible coffee shared between a mechanic who chose kindness and a soldier who chose conscience. The universe was watching. It just did not know it yet. In 6 hours, the trial would begin. In 7, everything would change. But in that moment, in a cell at the edge of execution, 2 people from different worlds shared warmth and pretended tomorrow might not come, and somewhere in the cold mathematics of Talari protocol, an ancient algorithm stirred, began calculating, began counting acts of compassion like they were coordinates to a destination no one remembered how to reach. The compassion protocol was waking up, and it was hungry. The command bridge of the Vraxion was designed to intimidate. It succeeded. 300 Talari crew moved in perfect synchronization, monitoring systems, adjusting orbits, preparing weapons. At the center stood Commander Vraxion himself, 7 feet of calculated menace and 2 centuries of unquestioned authority. Sam and Arina were brought in, restrained but not bound. A professional courtesy, maybe. Or perhaps the Talari simply could not imagine how 2 unarmed beings could threaten a warship. They were about to learn. The trial was not a trial in any human sense. It was a statement of facts, followed by execution. Commander Vraxion did not sit, did not posture, simply stated reality as he understood it. Arina of the Talari Third Fleet, you are charged with desertion, treason, and violation of Directive 7 Omega. You abandoned your post during a sanctioned cleansing operation. The penalty is immediate termination. Do you contest these facts? Arina stood straight. Her voice was steady. I do not contest the facts. I contest the premise that following an unjust order is justice. The bridge went silent. Even the efficient Talari crew paused. No one contested orders, not in 200 years. Vraxion's expression did not change. There is no provision for moral disagreement in Talari military code. Then your code is incomplete. The commander turned his attention to Sam. And you, human, you confessed to harboring a known fugitive. You had no obligation to this deserter, no kin bond, no tactical advantage. Explain your illogical behavior. Sam thought about how to translate a bowl of soup into something a fleet commander would understand. Failed, gave up trying. She was hungry, I had food. The math seemed simple. Vraxion tilted his head in what might have been genuine confusion. You sacrificed your final sustenance for a stranger, of a species that has historically shown your kind no mercy. This is not mathematics. This is madness. Sam felt the weight of the 300 souls from Kepler, the weight of Earth spinning alone, the weight of every choice that led to this moment. Maybe, but I would rather die mad and human than live sane and empty. The commander processed this. Sam could almost see the calculations running behind those cold eyes. Threat assessment, strategic value. Finding neither, Vraxion raised his hand. Execution will proceed. Both subjects. Immediate termination is authorized. That was when the pendant around Arina's neck began to glow. Everyone felt it. A pulse that moved through the ship like a heartbeat, like a song, like a memory surfacing from depths no one knew existed. The pendant lifted from Arina's chest, suspended by forces that had nothing to do with gravity and everything to do with recognition. What is that? Vraxion's voice held something new, something that might have been alarm. Arina's eyes went wide. The pendant. It is. Oh no, it is activating the full archive. The air above them exploded into holograms. Not star charts, not fleet movements, moments, memories, emotions rendered visible. Sam offering the kettle. Because I can still choose to be human. Arina laughing at terrible coffee. You are all absolutely mad. The village bringing jars of food, small gifts from people who had nothing. Sam's hands, weathered and scarred, wrapping kelp around alien wounds with the concentration of someone performing surgery. Arina teaching Emma, fixing generators, moving through the ruins with purpose that looked almost like hope. The dropship ramp. Sam stepping forward. I die in good company. Every moment, every kindness, every illogical, wasteful, beautiful act of compassion recorded and broadcast to every screen on the bridge. 300 Talari crew members watched a human share his last meal. Watched him choose death over abandoning someone he barely knew. The silence was absolute. Irina's voice was barely a whisper. The pendant. It is not just a memory keeper, it is a witness stone. Ancient Talari protocol, from before we forgot. It records acts of... She stopped, looked at Sam. Acts of absolute compassion. Vraxian stared at the holograms, at Sam offering warmth when he had none to spare, at Irina learning to laugh again, at the village that fed a monster because a mechanic had shown them it was possible. This is... The commander's voice had lost its certainty. This is the compassion protocol. I thought it was a myth. A new voice spoke from the rear of the bridge. The vice commander, older than Vraxian, stepped forward. Her movements were slower, deliberate. It is not a myth, Commander. It is the foundation of Talari law. The protocol that built our civilization before we replaced mercy with efficiency. She looked at Sam, and her eyes held something that might have been wonder. The protocol states that anyone who demonstrates absolute compassion in the face of extinction must be recognized, protected, honored. Vraxian's hands clenched. That law is obsolete. We are a military force. Compassion is a weakness we evolved beyond. Did we? The vice commander gestured to the holograms, still playing on repeat. Or did we simply forget what strength looks like? Sam found his voice. So let me get this straight. Your ancient law says that because I shared some bad soup, you have to. What? Let us go. The vice commander turned to face the entire bridge. The compassion protocol supersedes all military directives. It requires that the one who demonstrated absolute compassion be recognized as a bearer of the first law. She paused. It requires that we submit to their moral authority. The bridge erupted, not in sound. Talari did not shout, but in a wave of shocked stillness that moved through 300 souls like a systems failure. Commander Vraxian's voice was ice. You are suggesting that I take orders from a human mechanic who gave away his last meal. I am suggesting that our entire civilization was built on the idea that compassion is the highest form of intelligence. The vice commander walked to Sam, stopped 3 feet away. And this human just demonstrated what we have spent 2 centuries trying to erase from our collective memory. She looked at Irina. That mercy is not weakness. It is the foundation of everything worth protecting. Vraxian stared at Sam, at the holograms, at the pendant still glowing with recorded warmth. Sam could see the war happening behind those eyes. 2 centuries of military precision against 3,000 years of forgotten law. If I recognize this protocol, if I submit to this human's moral authority, what does he command? Every eye on the bridge turned to Sam Holt. Ex-mechanic, colony survivor, man who shared his soup. In the holograms, his younger self smiled and said, "Because I can still choose to be human." Sam took a breath, thought about what he would want if the universe actually worked the way it should. I command that you remember. Remember that before you were soldiers, you were people. Remember that efficiency without empathy is just elaborate cruelty. And remember that if a starving man on a dead planet can choose kindness, maybe an empire with all the power in the galaxy can too. The silence stretched. Seconds, minutes, eternities compressed into the space between heartbeats. Then Vice Commander stepped forward and knelt. The pendant recognized you, Sam Holt, and the Compassion Protocol recognizes what you represent. I submit to the bearer of the first law. One by one, the bridge crew knelt. Weapons powered down. Targeting systems disengaged. 300 Talari warriors, bred for conquest, chose memory over orders. Commander Vraxian stood alone, the last one standing. Sam could see the decades of conditioning warring with something deeper, something that had been buried but never quite died. Why? Vraxian's voice was barely audible. Why did you share your soup? Sam thought about that. about all the complex reasons and simple truths. Because she asked. Because I could. Because 300 people burned on Kepler, and I could not save them, but I could save one person on Earth. Because kindness costs nothing and means everything. He met the commander's eyes. Because I still can choose to be human. And today, I chose yes. Vraxian stood there, the last soldier of an empire that had forgotten its first principle. Then slowly, like a building accepting its own collapse, he lowered himself to one knee. The compassion protocol is recognized. The bearer is acknowledged. She looked at Sam with something that might have been the beginning of understanding. What happens now is up to you. Earth looked different from orbit. Sam had seen it from space before, during the colony transports, but that was when humanity still believed it had a future. Now, looking at the blue marble through the view screen of a Talari warship, he saw something else. Potential. The stubborn, irrational potential of a species that shared soup when they should have hoarded it. The fleet did not leave. That was the first surprise. All 12 warships remained in orbit, and over the next 3 weeks, Sam watched as an empire remembered how to care. Supply ships descended. Not weapons, food, water purification systems, medical technology that made old Martha cry because her arthritis stopped hurting for the first time in a decade. Talari engineers worked alongside Marcus, rebuilding the power grid with technology that would last centuries. They moved with the same efficiency they brought to war, but the target had changed. Ari Na walked the beach with Sam on the 23rd day. The village behind them hummed with new life. Lights that did not flicker, warmth that did not depend on burning furniture. Emma was learning Talari engineering from a crew chief who had forgotten how to smile until a teenager made him laugh. Commander Vraxian wants to give you a fleet, Arina said. Her tone suggested she found this hilarious and terrifying in equal measure. A whole fleet. Under your command. Bearer of the first law, Admiral of Compassion, Keeper of. She stopped. He has 7 more titles drafted. Sam bent down, picked up a piece of sea glass worn smooth by decades of waves. What did you tell him? That you would probably ask for more soup. Sam laughed. It felt good. Felt like something he had not done enough of since Kepler burned. You know me too well. They walked in silence for a while. The kind of comfortable quiet that only comes from sharing impossible things and surviving them together. Above them, the Talari fleet adjusted its orbit, running calculations, preparing for something, everything, a future no one had planned for. The vice commander told me about the protocol's history. Arina's voice was soft. 3,000 years ago, before the Talari became conquerors, we were refugees ourselves, fleeing a dying star. Another species found us, fed us, sheltered us. The compassion protocol was our promise to never forget that debt. She looked at the sea. Somewhere along the way, we decided efficiency was more important than memory, and then a mechanic shared his soup. And then the universe reminded us what we really are. Sam thought about that, about species and empires, and the weight of forgetting. But mostly he thought about Arina falling from the sky, and the choice to be human even when it cost everything. What happens now? He asked it quietly because the answer mattered. Arina smiled. It was getting easier for her. Now. She gestured to the village, to the lights, to the fleet above. Now we rebuild. The Talari fleet goes to other forgotten worlds, other abandoned colonies. We remember what we were before we became executioners. She looked at him. You changed an empire with a bowl of bad soup, Sam Holt. I suspect you are going to be insufferable about it. Probably. But I am going to be insufferable on a beach, drinking coffee, watching kids learn to engineer futures instead of weapons. There are worse legacies. The radio in Marcus's workshop crackled. A new voice. The message repeated across every frequency, in every language, carried by Talari transmitters that reached across 70 systems, from the Talari fleet to all displaced human colonies. refugees of avarice, survivors of the Rim collapse, anyone who was abandoned, anyone who was forgotten. We are coming. We are bringing supplies, shelter, and a debt 3,000 years overdue. We are bringing the memory of what one human taught us. That compassion is not weakness. It is the only strength that matters. Sam listened to the broadcast, heard the rustle of movement behind him, turned to see the entire village gathered on the beach. Old Martha, Marcus, Emma, all 47 souls who had survived by sharing what little they had. They stood together, looking up at the fleet that had come to kill, but stayed to remember. Commander Vraxian's transport descended. The ramp opened. The commander walked down, and for the first time since Sam had met him, the Talari warrior looked uncertain. He stopped 3 feet from Sam, and in his hands was a bowl. Steam rose from it in the cold air. I am told that human tradition requires the sharing of meals to seal bonds. His voice was formal, but something in it had softened. I am unfamiliar with soup preparation, but my crew assured me this is acceptable. Sam took the bowl, looked at the contents. It was soup, real soup, with vegetables that probably cost more than the village's entire annual food budget, and meat that smelled like it came from animals that had never known Earth's gravity. He took a sip. It was perfect. Perfectly seasoned, perfectly warm. Perfect in every way except the one that mattered. It is amazing, Sam said honestly, but I think it is missing something. Vraxian's expression flickered. Confusion, concern. What does it lack? Sam smiled. He turned to Erina, who was already laughing because she knew. Then he looked at the commander, at the fleet above, at the village behind him. It is missing the story, the reason it matters. He held out the bowl. Want to share it? For a moment, Vraxian stood frozen. A warrior trained for 2 centuries to take, not to share. Then slowly, he reached for the bowl, took it, raised it to his lips, drank. And somewhere in the cold mathematics of Tahlari consciousness, something fundamental shifted. The commander handed the bowl back to Sam, paused, then spoke in a voice that sounded like it was discovering words for the first time. It tastes different when shared. Sam nodded. That is the point. He looked at Arina. Want some? She took the bowl, drank, smiled. It is better than the last soup. Sam grinned. I should hope so. That one was literally expired. They stood there on the beach, the 3 of them, passing the bowl between them while 47 humans and 3,000 Talari watched. And in that moment, on a planet that had been left to die, something impossible happened. An empire remembered how to be people, and people remembered they had never been alone. 6 months later, the refugee ships started arriving. Humans from 70 systems, brought home by a fleet that had rediscovered its purpose. The Tahlari built habitats, restored ecosystems, worked alongside the species they had once conquered, learning that the distance between oppressor and ally is sometimes just one act of remembered kindness. Sam Holt never took a title, never commanded a fleet. He stayed in his village, fixing generators, teaching engineering, and making terrible coffee that somehow tasted better when shared. The pendant that had recorded his choice hung in the village square now, playing its holograms on repeat. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it, to witness the moment that changed everything. But Sam's favorite moments were the quiet ones. Evenings on the beach with Arina, sharing soup that was always somehow better than it should be. Watching Emma graduate with Tahlari honors in engineering. Seeing Marcus's water purifier design adopted across 17 systems. Old Martha's 100th birthday, celebrated by humans and Talari together. One evening, a young Talari cadet approached Sam. She was nervous, clutching a datapad. Bearer of the first law. I am writing my thesis on the compassion protocol. I wanted to ask. She paused. Why did you really share your soup? The truth, not the legend. Sam thought about that, about Kepler burning, about Earth forgotten, about the choice to be human even when it cost everything, because I was hungry, and she was hungrier, because kindness was the only thing I owned that did not have an expiration date. He smiled at the cadet's confusion, because the alternative was becoming the kind of person who could walk past someone in need, and I decided I would rather die than be that. The cadet processed this, that is it. That is the great truth that changed the galaxy. Sam laughed. Yeah, disappointed. No. The cadet's eyes were bright, relieved, because if you can do it, anyone can. That, Sam thought, was probably the point. Years passed. The fleet grew, not as conquerors but as carriers of an old debt finally paid. The compassion protocol spread across the galaxy like a song remembered. Species that had forgotten how to share learned again, and at the center of it all, in a small village on a blue planet that refused to die, a mechanic and a deserter sat on a beach and watched the stars. Irina handed Sam a bowl. The soup inside steamed, rich with spices from 17 worlds. What do you call this one? She smiled. I call it the last meal, because it is the one that never ends. Sam took it, sipped, closed his eyes. It tasted like hope, like second chances, like a universe that had finally remembered what it was for. It is perfect. He looked at his friend, this woman who had fallen from the sky into his last can of expired soup and somehow saved them both. Thank you. For what? For being hungry. For falling. For giving me a reason to remember that being human is a choice we make every day. He raised the bowl in a toast. To soup that changes empires. Irina raised her own bowl. To mechanics who refused to stop caring. They drank. And above them, the Tahlari fleet adjusted its orbit. Below them, a village thrived. Around them, a galaxy learned that the most powerful force in existence is not a weapon, not a fleet, not an empire. It is a person who shares their last meal and refuses to regret it. It is the choice to be human, even when it costs everything. Especially then. And in the end, that choice saved everyone. In the end, nothing cosmic was needed to change an empire. Just a hungry mechanic who refused to surrender the last human thing he owned, the choice to care. Sam Holt didn't save the galaxy with brilliance or strength, but with a decision so small it looked ridiculous from afar and undeniable up close. Sometimes the universe doesn't pivot on heroes. It pivots on those who decide not to become numb. So now I'll leave you with the uncomfortable part, the part where this story stops being fiction and starts being a mirror. What is the smallest kindness you've ever given, or received, that changed the direction of a day or a life? Which rules do you still follow, simply because no one taught you how to break them? And in a world that rewards cynicism, what does choosing to stay human look like for you? Before you go, type SOAP in the comments so I know you made it to the end of this madness. Tell me where on Earth or which colony you're watching from. Subscribe if this story punched you emotionally in any organ. Drop a like to feed the algorithm's starving soul. Share this video if you think someone needs a reminder that humanity still has fangs and a heart. And hit the next story in the card on your screen. The galaxy is wide, the fire is warm, and there's always more soup.